Everyone. Welcome to the Vital Communities Recruitment and Retention Workgroup. Today we're going to hone in on our 90-day sprints, and can we just start with the retention one and see if we can kind of sew that up so we can put some time into the recruitment piece?
Do you want me to put up our option here? And I want to put this to the group because I hate that we can't see each other's faces and have a regular conversation, but it's helpful to have the document up. So just tell me, and I try to be responsive to what the group wants, but I'll go ahead and put up so we can all look at it together. If we start getting into conversation, I might pop back. Yeah.
Okay. I just printed them ahead of time.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And maybe we just review them and then go back. So
sure.
The first action step, we had talked a lot about behavioral supports and the social emotional work that's going to need to be done here starting as soon as possible. I wonder if this would be a better fit for the vital community, for the Upper Valley Strong group. So there is an Upper Valley Strong group made up of people from mostly from mental health and the health field that was activated for COVID. We have been working mostly on kind of the emergency response piece, and it's been a great network, but it seems like all the right people sit at that table already that could be the response group that some of this group could join to take on this issue. So my thought is either for us to, if anyone's interested in working on this, to join the Upper Valley Strong group, or the Upper Valley Strong group to have a subgroup for this. But it just seems redundant to me for me to attend 2 meetings working on the same thing.
Can I jump in, Amy?
Yes.
So my understanding of what's happening in terms of the landscape of all these groups is that the Upper Valley Strong group is right now in a conversation about what their purpose is going forward. And that the idea of looking at this need, this identified need for behavioral supports was one option that's on the table, but that the group is kind of they're in a sort of a self-evaluation kind of a tenuous place right now. And that may be less focused on, that the focus of our initiative here is that that's a retention issue. So if we say, well, there's a retention issue because of these needs for additional behavioral supports, we might look at how our initiative could, if they're already doing that work, but they're not yet. And I guess that's where I would I think the groups have different purposes, and I'm wondering if we maybe keep this on the table for now and not completely shuffle it off to the Upper Valley Strong group, because I don't know that they're quite ready to totally receive this charge of addressing that problem. And I think in the landscape of what we're looking at in terms of this initiative, keeping it at the forefront of our goals, that's a retention issue, may not necessarily be a bad idea. I'm wondering if this isn't a goal, right? I guess what I'm looking at here is this is not worded as a goal. It's just worded as an identified need. So right. The question I would ask is, in terms of addressing that need, what do we want to do about that? Because we also have resources that the Upper Valley Strong group doesn't have, meaning we have businesses involved, we have a different, more cross-sector group. So
can I add to that a little bit? This is a really key retention issue, at least in my program that I'm identifying. And I've mentioned this in the childcare day at the legislature and that sort of thing, that like in our program, we went from having maybe 1 or 2 children that needed evaluations and assessments and strategies for how to deal with either behavioral or developmental needs. And now I've gone from 1 or 2 to I probably have 8. And it's a big difference. And for the teachers in the classroom, especially those that are like assistants that are fairly inexperienced, it's a real challenge. And they question, do I really want to deal with the stress of this every day for the pay that I make?
Yep.
And it's a serious retention issue that I'm dealing with. And I'm sure I'm not the only program that's dealing with it. So if the other group is not really ready to take this on and look at it through the lens of retention, I would say that it's something that as an action still needs to be, as you said, Andra, an identified need. That would be my thing, is I think that there's potential to lose qualified assistants and teachers who are just kind of at their max capacity for dealing with all of the different needs that these children are presenting.
So the project launch, I believe, is the one that's right, that's doing Upper Valley Strong now. And so when we actually, Ruth, this came up at our March VCEA director meeting as topic, other than the changing COVID guidelines.
Right.
This was top of mind. So the people, the resources that I have to work on this are on the Upper Valley Strong committee. So I contacted Becky Parton. They have things that are already in place. They have grants that are already trying to work on this, but they haven't had the partnership yet. They haven't built the partnership with facilities. And so I think that somewhere we're going to intersect. And my kind of take on what Upper Valley Strong, this subgroup of the childcare subgroup of Upper Valley Strong is are we needed? And is there someone already doing that work? So that was the question. So if this subgroup were doing that work, Upper Valley Strong was going to say to them, we're out, we're all set. But my personal feeling is that that's a group that has already been established, and they know each other, the resources are familiar. It seems like at some point it would be a really good place to merge with on this topic, because those resources are at the table. So
yeah, I would agree with that. It's just concerning to me if Andrew is saying that they're not sure that this is a focus or a question or a need that they're going to be really looking into. That would be my only thing, is that how do we make sure that this stays part of their focus moving forward if they're evaluating that now?
Right. I agree. And I think that, we weren't meeting as often because it just, it wasn't needed at some point. And then this came up. We had one meeting to discuss this. When we get back together, I talked to Becky the other day, and it's top of mind for everybody on that committee. But I guess their question was, who else is doing this? Are we redundant? Would our time better be spent back at home at their home bases doing work there, or should we convene and really double down and focus on this? So I think in the next meeting that will be decided. But my thing was, I really think that this group and that group need to work together on this. So that would be, they have a lot of strengths to bring to the table. So let's.
Amy, could I just interrupt and ask a question? So listening to all of these things, my curiosity is whether, back to Andra's point about, are the groups coming at it from different points of view and are going to converge, or are they coming at it from the same point of view and therefore it's redundancy? So I can imagine that child behavioral health is a major crisis issue across a lot of organizations, right? And trying to get the necessary behavioral health resources allocated for kids from 0 to 18. I mean, you know, I've sat in a meeting and listened to the school districts, and the superintendents are having the same problem, and school counselors and all of that. So is the Upper Valley strong effort really focused on the kids and getting the kids the necessary resources and thinking about the resources from that point of view? If so, they're definitely going to drive, you know, they're going to solve the underlying problem, and that is a good thing, right? The question is, if we're talking about the collateral damage, I guess, about not having those resources available for, and so that's the impact on retention. And I hear that retention question being raised in the school counselor setting, in a variety of settings. And so is there anything to be done on the retention front that isn't about solving the underlying problem? Like, are there sort of strategies that are designed to equip the people on the ground who are under-resourced and are going to continue to be under-resourced for a while, right, with particular techniques and strategies? And that's a whole different problem to solve. And so I guess that's my question is, if we delegated to the other folks the solving the root cause problem, which is getting behavioral health resources to kids, can we then be just tasked with thinking about the retention in one sector that serves children, not the entire sector that serves children? And what are the strategies that we would employ to either give more resources, more training, whatever it is, that would equip them to stay in the classroom while the root cause is solved? Because I think that's a different problem to solve, I guess. So that's just where you intersect all of the groups all of the time. So I'm asking you this question just because I don't know who else to ask, right? And maybe the problem is, again, as you say, the same people are showing up at the table trying to solve all of the problems. And maybe that's the problem too, is that we need to reach out to get more people at the various work group tables, so that you aren't sitting in every single meeting, or your staff doesn't have to choose between this meeting and that meeting, because both problems have to be solved. The immediate problem and the root cause problem. Does that make sense?
It does. And the discussion I had with Becky the other day was actually at the request of the directors at our directors meeting last week. And their request was mental health support for their staff, for themselves, in two prongs, for themselves and for them at working with parents that are under a lot of stress. So the children thing, we think a lot about children with behavior challenges, and that's one piece. But specifically, they felt like retention, that their staff is burnt and they're going to walk. They need mental health support, and they also need training. And we talked about some ways to deliver this on working with parents that are also under stress and who are constantly attacking you because you have to meet their kid at the door with a thermometer, or you have to be the one to call them and tell them their child has to leave because they have a symptom. Mm-hmm. So it's all about retention. And the Upper Valley work group is child care. It is a child care work group. It's not all children.
It's not early childhood in general. I think part of this is, it would be helpful is what I'm hearing is an identity thing. So Amy, when you say our directors meeting, your hour right there is the ECEA, right?
Right.
That's the perspective you're speaking from.
Yes, but that's the directors. That is mm-hmm. the boots on the ground telling us that this is what's happening in reality.
Right. Well, those,
and then what's Upper Valley Strong's intersect? So that's what the directors want and need. So they're not talking about trying to solve the problem of getting behavioral health resources to the kids. They're solving the problem of the retention problem. So that's
yes, and yes, and both, because there's obviously an issue, but the focus has been on the children
at the Upper Valley Strong level.
No, what's offered to them for support is behavioral health for children. And what they want to connect with is more mental health supports for their staff.
Okay,
so is professional development support.
So what is Upper Valley Strong offering? This is where I'm getting confused by all of the variety. So what is their focus?
Well, Andrew just said that they're not sure and they're evaluating their focus. Is that correct?
What they bring is an already established group of the providers in the community linked to early childhood, to young children, that whether it's behavioral health, whether it's pediatrics, whether it's mental health, project launch, trauma, those are the people that sit at the table.
So the Upper Valley Strong group, when you say providers, you're not talking about childcare providers. You're talking about providers to the childcare directors. This is where I'm getting, I'm sorry to be so dumb.
So can I, maybe I can help with an example. So I've been working with Becky Parton as well, because they have a pilot program to help programs and their staff work on these types of things to try to deal with the mental health aspect, the supports that we need. And so I'm in that program and my staff are in that program. And so there's that connection. It's really about how do we benefit the kids by supporting and giving training and guidance to the staff in the programs.
But so Becky Parton isn't Upper Valley Strong. Becky Parton is a provider that sits at the Upper Valley Strong table, if I'm understanding correctly.
Right.
Becky Parton works for Dartmouth Hitchcock, who holds the grant for Project Launch, and who has now started being the convener of Upper Valley Strong. So this is why I'm trying to cut in to talk about identities. Okay. So, and also the ECEA, right, has a group of some of the active directors and programs in the Upper Valley area. And my understanding of what we're doing here is incorporating that active feedback of the boots on the ground to change the systems that they work in, right? So we're talking about not just the retention of the directors that Amy's organization engages and represents, but also other programs who may not be as engaged or as involved or don't even exist yet in the ECA. So I guess I'm hearing a lot of need for disambiguation and sort of separating of purpose here, so that we can be really clear about who the we and our and they are. So I'm advocating exactly, Allison, you said what I was trying to say very clearly, that we as this work group, as an intersectional, community-based initiative, could focus on the retention piece that goes beyond that takes in, uses the feedback from a group of directors that Amy is connected to, right? And also expands that. We could come up with innovative goals that have to do with retention around this issue. And that could involve engaging other partners, like those people who are connected with Upper Valley Strong Child Care Committee, whose purpose is evolving right now. So they're mushy, right? But we could involve those partners, and then but if we don't know why we're doing what we're doing, like what is the goal that we want to achieve with retention? Do we want to develop I would even go beyond training, right? If this is a retention issue, these are people that, maybe need ongoing support. Like one of the things I heard Amy say was the teachers themselves are looking for mental health support for like the vicarious work that they're doing with the kids and families, right? That's like reflective supervision or something like that. That's not just training.
I think they're looking for that type of support, but they're also looking for hope in concrete change. And that's what's really difficult to navigate, at least for what I'm dealing with, is trying to tell them that, yes, this is hard. And yes, we'll get support for you that we can, but they want to know what's going to make it different.
How is it going to be better? Yeah.
That is the more directed thing. And so I get what you're saying, Andrew, that it's all a little bit, it's all kind of melding together. So I understand the wanting to like separate and not do twice the amount of work for the same purpose. I completely understand that. I just wish before we section this off and say it's something that Project Strong should take on, it would be a little bit more easy for me to envision that if we knew that they said this was really their purpose. And I know that they're working on programs and pilots and things like that to address the issues, but I don't know that they're looking at it through, we really have to do this to retain these teachers, and then look at other things that are causing problems with retention that relate. You know, it's a challenging thing. There are systems level things that I think need to be addressed that fall into this category. And I'm not sure that they're going to be looking in that way.
Could you say more about that? So you just gave me this great example of the support that Project Launch and Becky's group. So you've signed on for that because that's a way to give you and your staff support and try to deal with it. In your fantasy world, we'll go there for a second. In your fantasy world,
yes,
what would also be happening at the same time? So if Upper Valley Strong has kind of, let's just pretend for a second that Upper Valley Strong stays committed to this, and they've got the kind of immediate intervention that makes sense. And our goal might just be to drive everybody to that and make sure that they've got the capacity to handle that. What would be going on at the same time that would be helpful?
Okay, so I'll give another example.
Great, I'm good with examples. I love examples.
One of the reasons that I have so many more children who either need evaluation and services is where it's troubling is right now we can refer them to EI and we can get them what they need from birth to 3. When they turn 3, it becomes the issue of the school district in which those families live. Because of COVID and so many programs and providers stopping providing childcare, most of my families come from outside of our school district. So those children and those families it's really hard. Some of them choose to move their children to the school system, the public pre-K and that sort of thing in order to get services. But I have other families who don't want to do that and they want to keep their children at our center. So then they lose the ability to have services coming into the center, which also means we don't have the people who work with the kids who are specialists giving us strategies and ways of helping and addressing the needs of each of those children. So there's a system in place that prevents that. And that's where this whole thing of when they turn 3, they're the responsibility for those supports from their school district. So for retention, what that means for my teachers is we have children who really we need to have somebody come in and see what they're doing and how they're interacting in our classrooms, and we can't have that. And that's a problem because now they have more and more of those children, and it's really stressful for them. So they start questioning, do I want to keep doing this when there's no help, right? I have this pre-K kid who needs assistance, but I can't access that. I can't have the professionals come in and see what we're seeing in the classroom. So it's those kinds of things where I think the way the system is designed, it's an impact on retention. It's
right.
not as direct as some other things might be,
right.
but it's the effect of the systems that we have in place.
Okay, so I'm going to say back to you what I kind of think my original question was, or maybe it goes back exactly to your point, Andrea, about identity and what our goal is. If our goal is strictly retention, then it feels like to me all of the things that are directly the direct goal is to get resources to the teachers for their mental health, et cetera, the things that you're thinking about. And that then seems like if Upper Valley Strong, AKA Project Launch, AKA Becky Barton and others, continue to focus on this, then this group, which is specifically directly related to recruitment and retention, can probably turn their attention to other things. But if we want to say that we need to underline if we want to say, well, we're going to move beyond direct retention efforts to the things that are indirectly impacting retention, you've identified the gap, which is for kids age 3+. And where we could focus our attention is how do we get resources to teachers when there's cross school district, et cetera, right? So like that, and that goes back to then, Andrea, like I think, or Amy as the what the role of this particular group is, because are we trying to level up and do those things that are indirect, or do we then say, we've identified this and we pass this to the advocacy work group who's advocating for changes at a systemic level?
Right. So like figuring out where those kinds of things and gaps in needs, where does that fall and who's going to address those types of things? So if anybody knows the answer to that, that would be great.
I think we're building that plane while we're flying it.
Right.
Like I think that's what's happening. So I'm going to advocate now. It's one. And I want to make sure we talk about some other goals. And I'm really, really, really glad that we are having the discussions this way. Sharon also put some very specific suggestions for this thing. Sharon, I don't know if you want to, I just want to like verbally call that out. And if you want to add that in right now or.
Yeah, well, first of all, I just would say, Ruth, I think what you're describing with that gap is a statewide. I don't think it's an isolated situation to where you are. I think that's an ongoing years and years and years of statewide struggle when getting children's services outside of their school district. So absolutely, I
agree. I think it's just been it's just become a bigger issue.
Yeah, because there's so many more children who have needs, and they are also there's a shortage of therapists as well. So I think that's another piece of it. So schools have been struggling, as we all know. So I was trying to think of I heard that the mental health of staff was a concern that had been articulated. And I was just thinking about some I keep hearing this 90-day sprint. And some of these things are, big issues that could take years to resolve. And, it's taken years to acknowledge that they're problems. So I was looking for some practical things that might be able to happen in the meantime while system change happens. And so I just put in the chat that I wondered about maybe, investigating something about a group discount or some sort of, business supports related to InvestEAP. I know that some collaborative groups in other parts of the state have used that that was articulated as a benefit that they wanted to offer their staff in childcare programs. So that's what I just popped in the chat. And maybe there are other things that could be immediate supports. I think about, communities of practice with a facilitator, things like that. Because I think I've heard some professional development and so things like that. So I was looking for some concrete pieces to pop in for ideas.
And I think that is kind of, I think what we need is to get these like distillations down of like, okay, what's the actual like tangible nugget that we can grab onto from our standpoint. I do appreciate, Amy, that you brought up this question of like that, and that's something we always need to be asking, right? Is like, is there someone already doing this work or something very similar to it that we could be connected to? Do we need to set that aside? But it sounds to me like this is something that we might want to keep on a burner for this group. That's kind of what I'm hearing, that there's a possibility of that need of this work group. And so.
Yeah, it sounds like it wouldn't be a main focus, but it's something to hold on to in case another group doesn't really take it on in a strong way.
Could we feed back to it feels like to me that one of the things that could be happening is if there is this conversation going on in Upper Valley Strong, and I know Becky is cross-involved, just like Amy is cross-involved, if we could feed back to them, either Amy through the people that you are sending to the Upper Valley Strong meetings or the same people at the table, to say, right now we're putting this at the bottom of our list because we think that you are running with it. And we understand that you may be pivoting. And if you are going to, I hate that word now, but anyway, if you are going to pivot, could you give us that flag so that we could reconsider the level at which we're addressing that problem, right?
I can give you some real specific, because I also attend the Upper Valley Strong Child Care Committee, which is why I have some of the background information on it. And there is a smaller group of the leadership of that convener. So Holly Gaspar, who also works at DH, Becky Parton, who works at DH, they're both involved with Project Launch. Alice Ely, who works at the Public Health Council, who is the original, I believe, the original convener of the Upper Valley Strong work, of which the child care portion is a committee of. That was the original intention of it, and it was designed to be a time limited thing. Now that we've all decided that COVID is just endemic, I don't know what's going to happen with that, but so there's a subgroup of the leadership there, which I'm involved in through my other work with early childhood stuff in the Upper Valley region, and also as my dual role here as the project coordinator for this right now, to kind of form this exact thing of like who could do this work. We identified this need. Is the Upper Valley Strong Child Care Committee the place to do it? Should it sit at the Vital Communities work group? So that conversation is happening, and is there a structure that could be put in place to address this need? So a person, a specific, like, is it a different group than either of those two? And I think that the larger membership of the committee then is also making this sort of group decision together of what is our purpose? Have we served our purpose? Do we want to change our purpose? Are we morphing? Is that within our scope? So that is actively being discussed. And, as Amy referenced, I mean, she's also having one-to-one conversations with Becky from the standpoint of the ECEA as well, like representing those directors. So yeah, I think it sounds like for now, we're not sure if this is necessarily a goal we want to tackle in this particular forum. Do we want to look at another one? Do we have other thoughts on it?
I guess I would relabel the goal if you wanted. I mean, it's if the goal is if the need is to provide mental health supports for the staff, I guess as I read this, and maybe I'm just not reading this very effectively, but as I read this, that's not what that actually says. So to the extent that, you know, that's what we want our action item to be. And then if we say, okay, then it leads us to some of the brainstorming like Sharon has done. If our action item is to influence systemic change to get resources to 3+-year-olds in order to have this positive effect on retention, that's a different action item. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to touch back with Upper Valley Strong. And if anyone here is interested in being invited to that meeting, you can let us know. We will find out where they are. And I think it's important for, if they are looking at, I mean, they're already convened. If they're looking at this particular group of issues, then we need to meet and then make that, whether it's a 90-day sprint for them or for this issue. And maybe it's both. Maybe it's for children. Maybe it's for, you know, future long-term issues like Ruth was talking about. And also, I mean, there's public schools that are invited to that meeting. We do have links to schools, the school system and DH. And then also working, of course, the behavioral challenge with children. So I just feel like we would be tapping them anyway, because there are a lot of programs, like Ruth said, that are already happening. And those would be part of what we would need to do, is kind of inventory what the resources were out there. So they're all sitting at the table, we can just ask them. So let's get back with Upper Valley Strong on this. And if you're interested in attending that meeting, just to kind of inform, I guess that would be, that it would help them understand what we're asking them to take on. All right, so let's, if it's okay to move on.
You want me to share my screen again?
Well, I guess that the only other one really to work through would be, for this, so we can get to recruitment, would be the wellness campaign or the wellness initiatives, peer support groups. Again, for the retention, the ECEA launched a wellness campaign. We have over 80 staff participating, and what I would ask from this group, that our need would be again, just to kind of get the word out. We're looking for some gift cards and things like that to offer them as prizes, and just kind of thank you for participating. And then also that we are launching the staff approval, the Early Childhood Education Teacher Appreciation Week during the Week of the Young Child, which is the first week in April. And I will be, I'm mentioning it both the other groups to see, you know, if anyone's attending that has a billboard out front of their business, to be able to put something on that, maybe to offer discounts that week for early childhood educators, but at least, and maybe put up a yard sign to show their appreciation. So that's kind of where we are at Simply Moving.
Do we have any, two thoughts, Amy? One is, do we have any art to share? Do we have like a little Canva poster or something that everybody could go print out and put in their yard or put in the window of their business or anything like that? I think I could mobilize some people to do it, but I think ease of execution would be critical. So if we have something like that, that would be terrific to share. I saw that you shared some of the Week of the Young Child stuff, Andrew, but I don't know if there's a specific thing that we want to say, you know, vital communities or anything like that. So
yes, we're actually, we created something to start with, and the steering committee, we wanted to get more logos on it.
Okay.
So that's going before the steering committee, I think this Friday.
Okay, well, I'll be at that conversation, so that's fine. I will look at that, and that will be great. So
there will be a press release, like something to push out so that, yes,
great.
So that we can get the word out ahead of time.
Great.
I'm curious about whether there's a way. Sorry, go ahead, Ruth.
No, that's okay. I just had a question about the signs and that sort of thing. I know that that would be a really nice thing for people to see. And I think that there are people who would want to support that. Did they look into, like, I don't know about the timing of when that week of the young child is, but I know that for any place here, like in our town, to put things up, they have to get zoning approvals for that ahead of time. So I was just wondering, like, what is the timing of that?
Okay, so I believe it's a week of the 4th to the 8th, 2nd to the 8th of April. And we made the signs. I can send that out. We send out a, you'll get a sign up because the EPA would buy the sign. And we made it small enough so that it doesn't go over. Most of the towns we researched, it was, you can have something if it were, but smaller than a certain size.
1 foot by 2 foot.
Yeah, but they don't, and it has to be so far from the road and everything. And there is a caveat that you do need to check with your town zoning laws. So
okay,
we'll get that out as soon as we can get the flyer going.
Well, I'm even thinking, Amy, like at River Valley, we have all of these digital bulletin boards that run. And so like, even if we could have the art electronically so that I wouldn't even need for ECEA to print something for me, I could just use it and drop it into my electronic feed and put it into my newsletter and do some other things beyond visible postage. And then we'd also be happy that we have some high format, high quality, large format printers. So we could probably even print our own. So just a note that if we could have that stuff electronically as well, that might be really helpful to getting it more ubiquitously displayed. The second question I had was just a clarifying question about the kind of massages that you want and what you're thinking about, because we run a massage clinic in Lebanon to give our massage students enough hours. I could talk to our massage therapy instructor and find out what possibilities there might be for us to do, because right now we've been focused on public health workers and getting them signed up, but I could see about it. Now, are you talking about massages that they actually, like they bring their chair and they come and do chair massages during the day, or are you thinking about anything?
And honestly, I don't know how it works, and we can't afford to buy a bunch of massages for like hundreds of people. So I mean, if it were easier, we could give out like gift coupons or something like that for a space. If that's what.
Well, I'm just thinking about, I think that, I don't know, I'll talk to my massage, the director of the department, and see what might be possible. And it seems like there could be an interesting marriage here. And I we're not the only massage therapy, but we do cover the entire Upper Valley. So we've got people in Keene, we've got people in, so, I mean, I'll find out.
I guess that's part of my thinking of like what this group could do out like in a more systemic way, because we have this sort of like, we have 90-day sprints within a 3-year initiative. So how can the people who come to this table engage local businesses in a system that we could develop that will, again, like meet the needs of current directors that are involved with the ECEA, and also set up something that will build into the system this understanding that the community is invested in the wellness of people who are taking care of the littles, right? So
the other place that I can definitely go is I have a regular meeting with all of the chambers of commerce for the Sugar River region. Plus I sit on the board for the Upper Valley Business Alliance. Plus I can connect to Greater Keene, Peterborough. So if you, I'm sorry, I could reach out to the chambers to publicize it to their businesses. I just need to have the materials to give them, because they're happy to do that kind of stuff. They're leanly staffed too and don't have the ability to create it. But if you would, and the Upper Valley Business Alliance board meeting is this Wednesday afternoon, Amy. So if you can just send me whatever you've got as a draft, I will And then I meet with the other chambers on Friday morning after the steering committee or whatever at some point. So
yeah, that would be great to have something go through the Chamber of Commerce, like in our towns, to just kind of have it up on their website or anything, because they have the connection.
I'm sorry, I'm not as connected on the Vermont side. The one person I could get to on the Vermont side is PJ in Hartford, but we can think about it.
Well, so there's things like also, you know, like Vital Communities has the Local First initiative that they do. So how, you know, I think any local businesses that would be willing to kind of, I don't know, put deposits into a wellness bank, right? So kind of like how there's like time exchanges and timeshare things, time banks in local communities, who are willing to bank goods or services for ECE providers to withdraw during the whatever, the 7 days of April 2nd to April 8th and beyond.
Yeah.
Like that would be awesome.
Yeah, that is probably a little bit more structure than anybody could materialize in 2 weeks, Andra. I love the idea, but
of course,
it feels pretty cray-cray to me as a like, but what I can definitely do is start by getting them to be awareness of this and the fact that this is what we're looking for, and can they start promoting it through the chambers? The other side that you're getting from them is that they're getting they're struggling too. So there will be a little bit of a competing ask situation. So I'll start there and have it let your vision dance in the back of my head. But yeah.
So I'm wondering, that's a great idea. And Andrea, I'm like you sparked an idea for me. My other issue that's been relevant recently are, you know, my lower paid employees that are like assistants and that sort of thing, being really stressed by gas prices. So I wonder if there's a way to address some of this by trying to set up something that would be deposits into an account that could be used for, instead of gift cards for massages and things like that, but gift cards for something more tangible that helps them and their families. Because that helps retain them as well, is to know that, you know, like when I say to them, I know this is a problem that now it's costing you, you know, a lot of money just to drive here to work. If I was able to say, but there's this new thing to really kind of thank you and support you, that here you can have like a gift card to get a tank of free gas or something, that would actually mean something to my teachers. And I'm sure that there are other providers whose staff, it would mean something to them too. I have some staff who, you know, we might have that idea about having massages, but not everybody's comfortable with people touching them in general. It's just like some people just don't like it. So maybe there's a way to have another option that still supports them in their needs, which takes some of the stress off of them. So it was just an idea that, based on what you said, that kind of sparked my thinking.
All good ideas.
I mean, I definitely think, I mean, it's almost making me think like, could we have a registry, right? You know, like a registry of what the needs are, and that you know, like in the donors choose environment kind of thing. So I think that this is all worth exploring. And in the meantime, I will at least get the conversation started with the chambers so that we can take advantage, and they could at least show their support by whatever. And I suppose, Andrew, if they wanted to make contributions, they could be processed through Vital Communities. That's another like little piece of this, is who is the recipient organization that then gets them to the child care centers. And
probably EA. I don't think Vital Communities want to take that on, but
We might. I mean, that's a community-wide issue. I mean, I'm willing to ask about that and stuff. Like they are in development, and they've put their hat into the ECE ring. And I think, like Sharon's point, I'm again in the chat, I'm going to be your voice, that these examples reflect the issue with the wages. Like to me, I see this as these are concrete things, like you said, Allison, like taking a step by talking to the chambers, getting the word out to the businesses, and as part of this, the larger goal of this group to increase retention among staff across programs, even those that don't yet exist, that this can be framed, maybe not in the next 2 weeks, but can be framed as like, hey, the advocacy work group is working hard to get base wage, like people getting a wage where they can feed themselves and put gas in their car to get to their like very intense jobs that they love a lot. and in order to retain the people who are present in the classrooms, here is something simple you could do that might cost you, the business, $50, a one-off thing. It doesn't, and some larger businesses could afford to do more. I don't know, right? But putting it in the context of the whole issue without overwhelming people, of course, but like these are your neighbors.
Could I ask just a fundamental question as I start to think about scaling this or whatever? How many current employees are there in early childhood in the Upper Valley? Just a rough guess. Are we talking about 5,000 people? Are we talking about 1,000 people? Are we talking about?
Amy is grabbing reference material.
Amy has the data.
Yes.
I think that one of the things that that we might want to consider too, handing off to the advocacy group, is that anything and everything that a K through 12 teacher is eligible for, that early childhood teachers are eligible for as well, whether it be at Staples for a discount, we're not eligible, and then all the way up to loan repayment programs at the state level. If you're ECE, even other grants, that you have to work in a public school setting in order to qualify. So that would be something that we could advocate for. I'll have to get back to you because this is the wrong form, but we do have, it's a last count, which was, this was updated in August of last year. We had 126 that providers we work with total, in between family-based and center-based licensed providers. And then we're looking at around 3,300 slots.
3,300 slots if they were all filled, and we know that there's always, so 3,300 slots, 3,300 kids or 3,300 employees?
Capacity of children, that's the capacity we have.
Okay, so any idea of those 126 providers, what the total workforce is?
I could only give you what we had from 35 providers, and I would have to look that up.
Okay, because I'm just sitting here thinking like, okay, if we're talking about 1,000 people, let's just pretend like it's 1,000 people, that there are an average of 10, let's put 1,260, that there are an average of 10 employees. Now, this is something like a chamber could definitely, or a group of chambers could definitely take on, is I want a gas card for all 1,260 employees, right? Like that is a very manageable, think the thermometer on your town square, la, 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 la. Yep. And that's the level at which I feel like we are going to have to get granular in order to mobilize people, in part because it feels so overwhelming and so despairing. And we keep going up to these systemic things that we have to be moving towards. Like I am not undercutting the effort there at all, but in the meantime, just to get more and more people educated about it, the more, if I've given a gas card, I've sort of taken on the fact that the people taking care of my kids can't afford to get to work.
Right.
Right.
I think that's a great idea. I think that the way that it really fits in is, like I said, I'm participating in the pilot program to try to give this mental wellness support to my staff, and it stresses them out that I'm even asking them to come to the meetings. Like they're like kind of done and over with. How can we, de-stress ourselves and work on these things? They don't even want to think about that anymore. They want something practical, like give me something that helps me and my family. And that, I think that
doesn't
like
take
that,
any more time from me or any more effort from me.
yes.
Because helping me by asking for more effort from me is not really helping me.
Right. I haven't been
exhausted.
I haven't been able to schedule a meeting for months. So before Omicron, we haven't been able to meet. I communicate with Melanie all the time, tell her what's going on. We have plans for when our next meeting will be, but it's like the one more thing on a staff that's already understaffed and trying to keep things going. So I think that this idea of take the total number of, employees in the area that are doing early childhood and say, okay, now let's find businesses or communities or individuals who are willing to donate to give them a little relief in one area of their life.
I will say that I do believe the Mascoma Community Grant is coming up. The deadline is due. And I'm thinking that I think the maximum ask there is like $14,000. But it would be interesting if anybody has capacity, and I'm sorry that I do not. I hate to throw out ideas and then say, I don't have capacity to, but I could find out about the grant. It would be interesting to see if Mascoma would underwrite gas cards for childcare workers as a part of a retention strategy, because $14,000 would probably buy 1,200 gas cards, 1,250 gas cards.
I don't know anything about that grant.
Uh-huh.
So if you could provide information, and I guess it depends on how complicated.
Well, I think what would have to happen, I think what would have to happen is what we really need to know is who the applicant is going to be. So like it would probably have to be Amy, it would probably have to be your organization, or and I would have to look at, but I'm sure that they would be eligible, but they would have to, because then there would be the distribution mechanism, right? So right. I don't think that Mascoma would award to an individual childcare center, but right. If we could say we're going to award to the ECEA, and all of the 100, and they are going to arrange for all of the 126 providers that are licensed family and center-based or home and center-based providers to be able to provide their employees with this as a retention strategy, as an immediate retention strategy. I don't think this grant application is particularly complicated. It's designed to be accessible, but I can find that out. I will find that out and I will circulate it. I know, Amy, you have absolutely no time. You have less than no time to write that grant. So, but it's just an idea. If we wanted to get it, we can build it the other way. I'm totally happy to try to build it the other way. And I'm not committed to this as our goal, but I'm just saying that that's the kind of thing that we could be getting in chambers and others involved in, that I think would be engaging for them and manageable for them.
Okay, we really need to move on to recruitment here. This is really good. Allison, let me think about that, because we already received a Mascoma grant for recruitment. Speaking of recruitment, so I'm not sure if we would be okay to do that again, and we'll have to look at the total impact and how we would.
Yeah, and I like I say, I'm spitballing it right now. I'm not sure that I would even, after some reflection, think it was the best idea, but it's just an idea.
And it could be those in need, you know what I mean? We could give them out as like an emergency situation or something like that. All right, if you wouldn't mind, we can look. Do we want to look quickly? Can everyone see it, or should we have it shared?
I can pop up the recruitment. I just wanted to note that there was another goal that was come up with for retention, which we don't have to cover today, but just not to let that just drop off, at this identified need to help prepare new educators for the challenges of working with young children. So I'm just naming it, that it was something we haven't covered today and that it was an idea. And so I can put up the recruitment page.
It might end up melding into recruitment if we do onboarding with it.
Sure.
This is a lot. So, how much time do we have? Not much. Okay. Oh, I'm still in retention. Are we okay? So the only one we got to is creating an inventory of New Hampshire and Vermont workforce development supports. We had talked about, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I just see my name and Sharon's name. And Sharon, I know that you and I haven't talked. So have we secretly done this work? And
I'm seeing my name for the first time. So
okay, good. This is totally in my wheelhouse, and I would love to do it. But my life has been such now that I'm like, oh shit, did I promise to do this? And this was due. And
no, I think it's great. It is something that I think would be really useful, and I'm not sure if the work has commenced or not.
Okay, so in that, the only thing I have to offer is the Step Up to Childcare program, Sharon. And I have a meeting with North Country Career Center with, is it Adriana or Ariana Cole?
Marina Cole.
Mariana.
Marina.
Maria. Right, maybe it's spelled wrong. Anyway, I have a meeting with her, I think, next week, because we're looking at something similar in New Hampshire and trying to figure out the barriers of why people are not getting more involved in utilizing, or if we need to bring one to the career center here in Upper Valley for the Vermont side. So that may actually be a project that this group takes on, is matching the Step Up to Childcare program to a career center and leveraging that and getting it going.
So if I don't want to take up too much time of this group to discuss that, but the initial concept of it being spread beyond the Northeast Kingdom came shortly after a meeting that I had with Marina Cole, maybe 8 months ago. And what we're finding is that each of the adult CTE programs that's looking to enroll students is struggling. So I think that there are some good pieces about it, but that they have they own that curriculum, they own that model. I say own, in quotes, as to how it's presented. And I'm not sure that it aligns ideally with the pathways for other advancement opportunities, educational advancement opportunities. So I think that it's a great concept for introduction to a career, but I think you also did a project earlier based on introducing people to the career, and people were hired before they could complete the process. So I think that it's definitely worth a conversation, but I would dig into it before you jump on the idea. I just think that it's misleading, I think, when you have 6 different programs have the same title for what a training program is, but the components are all slightly different. So I think that there's an opportunity for it to be launched in a, systematically in a way that makes that could make it a little bit stronger. So I'm hoping that they use these programs that have done this pilot in other areas and sort of assess the successes and evaluate and tweak it. So good luck with the conversation. I'd love to hear what you think about it. And I think that one of the things I would love to see more of is on the front end, introducing the career opportunities and pathways as part of that training, because it's kind of a big commitment for somebody who may or may not be sure that this is what they want to do. And I think that we need to be having people that are engaging in this who are committed so that we're not, so that there are supports in place for all those people that you're talking about that struggle that first year, or new assistants. I could see this being a really cool opportunity for training substitutes or floaters. Like that. I think that could be like a regional approach that addresses some of those other workforce challenges that you've talked about previously. So I think that there's some good opportunity there, but I'm not sure just the structure that it is right now is going to get you where you need to go. Just my personal opinion.
The idea of a pool of substitutes who are vetted and cleared and background checked and fingerprinted and all of that, it would be such a blessing to so many programs, because and to directors, because in my program, I'm the only substitute. So it's really challenging. If I have two people who need to be off, what do I do? So then I'm calling or emailing parents saying, sorry, but these 5 children can't come today because I don't have a teacher. And then it's a financial impact, because we've made the choice to say, if we call you and cancel your group, we're not going to charge you for that day. So there's multiple levels to this. So that idea of having something that would be regional would be really helpful. I know that in Vermont, at one point, like Let's Grow Kids and CDD were working on creating a substitute pool, but I've not heard anything more about it other than I knew they were working on it. So I'm not sure that it's gotten to a point where it's accessible to people yet. So having something that would be primarily in the Upper Valley, so it would be people at least in our area, would be really wonderful.
That's a specific thing that the facilities and program models work group is looking at.
Oh, good.
Is having like a shared staff piece.
Perfect.
I noticed something, and I just want to name it, that I'm not clear now. I'm confused now whether this group feels like the goal is to create an inventory of workforce development supports, meaning this group needs to do research, and whether, so that would be Carrie, Allison, Sharon, and Amelia, who are the most knowledgeable about this particular thing, or if we're investing in a specific workforce development support, which is what, like Amy brought it sounded like Amy was referring to a specific kind of workforce development support, right?
I thought Amy was just adding to our list of inventory. I didn't think she was proposing. So I think she was just sharing, here are a couple of things that I know about that you can add to your list. And so I just want to go back and actually say that I'm happy to take this on. I'm assuming that Carrie is my colleague at River Valley. I don't know who Amelia is. I now know who Sharon is, right? So Sharon and I can commit, if you're up for it, Sharon, that we could commit that we could take this on. Just my performer self would love it if we would take it out of February 22 and put it into March 22, and probably think that probably it's going to take us more than 3 weeks. Just knowing kind of, so that maybe what we could say is 60 days or something, or 90 days, and we can keep adding to it. But I would like to have some realistic goals so that we can actually deliver what we're promising to you guys, and not just come to meetings and go, sorry, duck and cover, we didn't get it done. Does that seem right to you, Sharon?
Thank you for saying that, Allison. I'm away next week, so I really am feeling what you're saying.
So what do you, this was totally dropped in there. The work keeps going, whoever's here. So thank you for saying.
Why don't we, it's mid-February, it's mid-March now. So it's March 15th. Why don't we just say 90 days, which would be April, May. Why don't we say deliver by June 15th? Okay, and Sharon and I will take on recruiting these other 2 folks. I presume that there are people that have volunteered for this work group but haven't been assigned anything, that they too would discover this on their list to their surprise, right? Like you guys haven't had.
Amelia was here last time. Amelia Struthers is the local representative for the Northern Lights professional development system.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
And was Carrie here last time? No. Okay. I'll talk to Carrie. Okay.
Okay, we caught up on that. I think that's a great idea. Let's look at discover specifics about why existing programs are struggling to succeed in recruitment.
Well, so that, I think this, anything I listed that didn't have a date next to it was sort of a sub discussion of that goal. So I don't know if you could see, I numbered them and put them in bold. So I think there's 3 actual larger goals here.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So is that work group going to work on those address those at all or not?
It looks like that those are sub questions. If I'm looking at this, it's like, why are if these existing programs are struggling, why are they struggling? Like, in other words, if we discover that the support is there is an apprenticeship program, but we can't get enough people in it, then what are the cost commitments? So it looks like to me that these are all questions that you guys want to know about the programs that we inventory. Is that right, Andra?
I think you're gonna, so do you see this workforce program inventory tab? That's for you all to populate. So I
okay. But looking on that list, those in cells 11, 12, and 13, those are sub questions for goal or action item number 1, correct?
I think our sense when we were developing these was that these were, yes, these were like ancillary, qualitative, contextual questions that you will have information about as you're developing this inventory. So having a list is great, but this contextual information is going to be the gold.
Okay, thank you.
Right? Yeah.
Okay. Let's skip to number 2, investigate workforce development bills. I think that it's probably too early to really do much with those because they're both sitting in the legislature right now on both sides of the river.
Well, I think, excuse me, I think actually this, Michael, this might have been you that suggested this. And I think that this goal had more to do with, are there general workforce development bills that aren't specific to ECE that ought to include ECE, the ECE workforce? Am I remembering that wrong? Or so this was like sort of like going outside of just the bills that are focused on early childhood education.
Yeah, Andrew, I don't remember if I suggested this or not. That does not sound familiar to me. Let me see what.
Okay.
I think it might have been me. Because that's what's happened in Vermont. So I think that was on top of mind at the one meeting that I've attended. So that might have been me. So, and it's moving forward. So Vermont AUIC, the executive director, Janet McLaughlin, provided some testimony at the end of last week. And as of right now, that, it's the workforce behind the workforce that has been kept in the proposed legislative language. So that's exciting.
And Sharon, is that like a bonus program to provide bonesses for
this is this particular piece of it was actually, as I understand it, a recruitment. It was, let me just see if I can find my notes here. It was a recruitment campaign that was built into, that would be structured and organized for the state of Vermont, specifically for early childhood educators. I'll see if I can find the information and put it in the chat.
Do you have the number? Okay.
It's H703.
And I'm assuming Kim Ip was the one who was going to follow up for New Hampshire. So that would be Janet. And as far as I know, I don't know of anything in New Hampshire that's going on outside of ECE, but I will pay extra attention from now on because I really wasn't listening for that of school age bills, if there were any. Okay, we comfortable to move on to the third one? Recruitment campaign. Great. Thanks, Sharon. Development marketing plan for general public, gather and share social media, national ECE workforce recruitment articles. I heard in a meeting the other day that Vermont was creating a recruitment video. And
I think that's happening in Rutland.
In Rutland. That we would be able to share. And I know New Hampshire is producing one as well. Actually, it's for Vermont, they're calling it the Day in the Life, right? Day in the Life, okay. And New Hampshire is doing something similar. And they were supposed to be doing production right now. I think they're both in production right now.
Who's the audience for those videos?
There are actually two audiences for day. I think both of them have two. Sharon, help me. I know that they were doing a full, like a 5-minute recruiting video, and then they were going to break it down to like a 30-second social media pitch.
I think that they were thinking about highlighting the profession. And it could be educational for both the broadly in the community as well as for legislators, and then use small snippets of it for, general public, elevating the respect and awareness of what early childhood education is and does, and the importance.
In New Hampshire, I believe they have, I think they're actually doing one for school age and one for or school age after school or out of school time, and then an early childhood one. And those are actually focused on sort of join the workforce, highlighting the workforce as a path, the pathway to higher level positions and things like that. So they're taking a little bit different of a strategy in New Hampshire.
But who is the intended audience for that? Is it middle school kids? Is it high school kids? Is it?
In New Hampshire, they're actually putting it as a general recruiting strategy. They're going to buy airtime on television.
It sounds like working age adults is what it sounds like. I mean, it sounds like just a general job recruitment campaign, and right?
For retired people, it's not targeted as a career development strategy.
Got it.
That I know of at this time.
So basically 18 to 74 is what you're saying, kind of like.
Any warm body, is that it?
Yeah.
Hey, Amy, do you know who's doing that for New Hampshire?
I know the team, the person that's really spearheading it is Chris Emond at Boys and Girls Club.
Oh, okay.
Is that a C or a K?
C. EMOND.
Do we just, I'm sorry, I know this is running late and I've got to get off in a minute, but is there any state or even any locale that we think is doing a good job of this? Like, do we have a model that shows what a successful workforce recruitment effort looks like, because it feels like to me that, well, I'll just say this doesn't feel very strategic. It feels very much like just, we feel like we have to take action. So we're just engaged in activity for the sake of saying we've done something, but we don't really. Okay. So I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads like that. That insight is descriptive.
This is a stop over standing on the roof of your program and shouting, please come work here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not working for anybody much, I don't think. But
No. And not only come work here, but come work here and stay. That you might get people who are interested until you meet with them, and then they realize, wow, long days, not great pay, lots of stress, and very little breaks.
You know,
there's a lot of positive things about this field too, as we know. I feel like everybody's tired right now, but I think people are tired.
Right. It's like, how do we change that perspective and give them, what are the joys that we get out of what we do?
Or listen to them about how to do it differently. I mean, that's the other piece of this, is that I feel like, but anyway, that's a whole different conversation. I'm sorry, you guys, I have a 2 o'clock that I need to get my head into the game about. So thank you, as always, for humoring the person that seems to know the least on this call about everything that's going on. And Ruth, I especially thank you for being patient and giving examples so that I understood the real issues on the ground. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Andrew, can we just add that? Can we just record that? Because I feel like we need to sit and talk about what does work, because there are strategies that do work. I mean, CTE programs, technical, that used to work when they had practicum, that did work, and those people stayed and they were prepared. And
I put that into the work plan. I guess another thing that's connected to that, I'll just drop in before we end here, is that I was speaking with a director in Bridgewater who is starting a center, and I'm talking with her about the fact that, like, who are you going to hire? Like, where are the people? And I have the curiosity about where are the people who are already highly qualified, who disappeared into the hills and are so crispy about something that's really important to them that they don't want to come back. So, you know, her experience was that, you know, there's this center close to her where they lost a bunch of staff all at once. And she said they already left, and she's like, I wasn't poaching anybody, but I just said, like, hey, you could come work here. We have a different atmosphere. And they were literally like, I can't do that work right now. And I think people do this because it's a vocation. Mm-hmm. They also ought to be compensated properly for that, you know, not pay to play kind of a thing. But I'm just curious if we could come up with a way, and I don't have the answer, but like, they're out there. It's the same thing with mental health counselors. There's highly qualified people. Like, how do you attract people back to a field that has burned them out? Because
And in addition to that, some of the people who left during the pandemic were also people who were not quite ready to retire, but then the pandemic hit and they went, okay, maybe now's a good time to retire. Because I lost teachers that way. You know, they were like, okay, I've been through, even the ones that stuck with me to reopen after a year, I've had 2 people retire that are just like, I'm just getting too old to deal with all of this. Yeah. So, you know, how do we maybe re-engage them to say, well, okay, we get that maybe you're not ready to do this 40 hours a week, but maybe you could come back and do it half a day a week, you know, whatever.
We'd love to put you in our floater sub pool that's
and
shared among centers.
So like I've kept them, most of them, as substitutes, but it's still, you know, how could we maybe like encourage you to just come 1 day a week? Or
can you come cover lunch breaks? I mean, what if we were giving people breaks during the day?
This is the way I look at it. Even if they didn't want to come back and work for me, I would be thrilled if they were helping the other centers in our area. Like, I don't have any qualms about that at all. I feel like all of us need to be pulling together because this affects the whole community around us and the families who live here. So
I'm gonna commit to something. I will look up other sectors of the workforce where this issue has happened, because it has happened in other sectors, right, where they're just like, we can't hire people to do this work,
right.
and see if there's another sector that had success doing this in some way. So I will look that up. I will see what I can find out, if anything, but because I really am, there's like, you know, Amy, I remember you bringing up that like the people who are applying are not yet qualified to do this work. And that's another thing we could shore up and help. But I'm also just like, what about those folks who like really didn't want to leave, but they just couldn't do it anymore?
Yeah, that whole, it's like re-engagement. How does this fall under re-engagement? And I think that there's potential there. You know, even if you're talking about the ideas about a substitute pool, those are ideal people, because the last thing you really want in your substitute pool are people who are not experienced, because to come into a program for one day and go to this program and that program, or floaters, that takes a different level of experience and knowledge and ability to adapt. So I feel like those would be really good people to tap for those kinds of things.
And I think that part of, you know, part of what we could do is really focus some of our attention on, you know, the pipeline. And there's actually a study being conducted right now on who is in the current pipeline. Let's for Kids is supporting this research. And, you know, what's working well, what are the barriers? And so that is some information that we'll have soon. And so I do think that having some of that data will be useful. And what's already happening. Like, you know, last week I supported Vermont AUIC at a Community College of Vermont Career Access Day. It's the first time they've ever done early childhood education as a topic focus for the entire middle school. So almost 600 middle schoolers heard about a career in early childhood education. And so we've got that pipeline work. Then we spent a lot of time talking about the existing workforce. We could be highlighting, you know, do you have student debt? Do you live or work in Vermont? There's going to be a student loan repayment, you know, support system. There's going to be, you can increase your education. There's supports to get your, you know, if you have an associate's degree,